The truth about financial education that nobody tells you. I'm going to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Right now, at this very moment, there are decisions being made about your money that you don't even know about. Decisions that will determine whether you'll wake up at 60 years old with freedom or with fear. And the worst part? Most people realize this when it's already too late. They spend decades believing they're doing the right thing, following the path everyone told them to follow, only to discover they've been walking straight into a trap. This isn't about getting rich quick or finding some secret formula. This is about something far more fundamental, something that should have been taught to us before we learned algebra or memorized historical dates. But it wasn't. And that absence, that void in our education, is costing millions of people their peace of mind, their dreams, and their dignity. You might think you're too young to worry about this, or maybe too old to change anything. But what if I told you that the biggest lie we've been sold is precisely that? What if everything you believe about money and security is backwards? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will either wake you up or make you realize you've been sleepwalking through the most important decisions of your life. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine someone who did everything right. They went to school, got good grades, went to college, landed a decent job. They work hard, pay their bills on time, maybe even have a little saved up. On paper, they're successful. But here's what nobody sees. Every month, they're one unexpected expense away from panic. A broken car, a medical bill, something their kid needs for school. Their chest tightens when they check their bank account. They lie awake calculating and recalculating, trying to make the numbers work. They smile during the day and worry through the night. This isn't a story about poverty. This is a story about the middle class, about people with jobs and education who still feel like they're drowning. And the question that keeps me up at night is this: how did we get here? How did we create a society where people can do everything they're supposed to do and still end up feeling financially suffocated? Before we go further, I need you to do something for me. If this is hitting close to home, if you're feeling that knot in your stomach because you recognize yourself in this story, hit that like button. And subscribe, because what we're going to uncover together over the next few minutes might just change the trajectory of your entire life. The problem isn't what you think it is. Most people believe financial struggle is about not making enough money. They think the solution is a raise, a promotion, a better job. So they work harder, longer hours, sacrifice time with family, miss their kids' games and recitals, all chasing that next level of income. But then something strange happens. They get the raise. Their income goes up. And somehow, mysteriously, their financial stress doesn't decrease. In fact, it often gets worse. The apartment becomes a house with a bigger mortgage. The used car becomes a new car with payments. The simple lifestyle becomes one with more subscriptions, more commitments, more stuff. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up every time you start catching your breath. This phenomenon has a name in economics, but what matters isn't the technical term. What matters is understanding why it happens. And why it happens reveals something dark about how our society is structured. We're taught from childhood to be good consumers, not wise managers of resources. Think about it. How many hours did you spend in school learning about literature, science, history? Now compare that to how many hours you spent learning about interest rates, compound growth, asset allocation, or the difference between good debt and bad debt. The educational system, with all its good intentions, prepares us for employment, but not for financial independence. It teaches us to work for money, but not how to make money work for us. This isn't an accident. This is a feature, not a bug. An economy needs consumers, needs workers, needs people who will take out loans and pay interest for 30 years. What it doesn't need, from the perspective of those who benefit from the current system, is a population that understands how to build wealth, avoid debt traps, and achieve financial independence. That sounds conspiratorial, I know. But look at the evidence. Financial education isn't mandatory in most schools. The basics of investing aren't taught. Tax strategy is a mystery to most people. Credit card companies are allowed to market to college students who have no income. Payday lenders operate in poor neighborhoods with interest rates that would make loan sharks blush. The entire system is designed to extract wealth from those who don't understand how money works and transfer it to those who do. And the crazy thing? We participate in this willingly because nobody ever taught us there was another way. Let me tell you what financial education actually is. Because it's not what most people think. It's not about being cheap or depriving yourself. It's not about never spending money on things you enjoy. Real financial education is about understanding the invisible forces that shape your economic life. It's about seeing the matrix, if you will. When you understand money, you start noticing things. You see how that 0% financing offer is actually not 0% when you read the fine print. You realize why your friend who makes less than you somehow seems less stressed about money. You understand why that lottery winner ended up broke 5 years later. You begin to see that money isn't really about money at all. It's about power, time, and freedom. Every dollar you earn represents a piece of your life, hours you traded for currency. The question is, what you do with those hours after you've converted them into cash. Do you immediately trade them back for things that lose value? Or do you put them to work so they can multiply and eventually buy back your time? This is the fundamental equation that nobody teaches us. Here's where it gets personal. Think about your parents. Think about the financial lessons they taught you, intentionally or not. For many of us, those lessons were about scarcity, about fear, about holding on tight to whatever you have. Or maybe they were the opposite. Maybe they taught you that money isn't important, that you shouldn't think about it too much, that it's somehow dirty or corrupting to care about wealth. Both approaches, opposite as they are, lead to the same destination: financial dysfunction. Because the truth is that money is important, not as an end in itself, but as a tool that enables everything else. It's the foundation that lets you build the life you actually want to live. Without it, you're constantly in reaction mode, always dealing with the crisis of the moment, never able to pursue your real dreams because you're too busy surviving. And if you had parents who struggled financially, you probably absorbed their anxiety, their shame, their silence around money. Those emotional patterns are running in the background of your financial decisions right now, and you might not even realize it. The fear of talking about money, the belief that you're bad with numbers, the sense that wealth is for other people. These aren't facts. They're learned behaviors, and they can be unlearned. I want to talk about debt for a moment, because this is where lack of financial education does its most devastating work. There's a type of debt that builds wealth and a type that destroys it. Most people don't know the difference. They treat their mortgage, their student loans, their credit card balance, and their car payment as if they're all the same thing. They're not. A mortgage on a property that appreciates can be good debt, leverage that builds equity over time. Student loans for a degree that significantly increases earning potential can be an investment, but a credit card balance carrying 20% interest for purchases you don't even remember making? That's financial poison. A car loan for a vehicle that loses 30% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot? That's paying interest to own a depreciating asset, which is about as financially backwards as it gets. Yet millions of people are drowning in this bad debt, paying thousands in interest every year, watching a huge chunk of their income disappear before they even have a chance to use it. And they do this because nobody ever sat them down and explained what debt actually is. It's not free money. It's not even really about borrowing from a bank. It's about borrowing from your future self. Every dollar you spend on credit is a dollar your future self will have to earn, plus interest. You're literally stealing from your own future, and the bank is charging you a fee for the privilege. Now let's talk about something that makes people even more uncomfortable than debt: investing. Most people think investing is for rich people, for those who have money left over after paying bills. But that's exactly backwards. Investing isn't what you do with your leftover money. Investing is how you become someone who has leftover money. The concept is simple but powerful: compound growth. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Money that earns a return, and then earns returns on those returns, grows exponentially over time. A small amount invested consistently when you're young can become a substantial sum by the time you're older. But most people never start. They're waiting until they can afford it, not realizing that by waiting, they're forfeiting the most valuable asset they have: time. A 25-year-old who invests $200 a month until retirement will end up with more money than someone who starts at 35 and invests $400 a month, even though they invested less total money. That's the power of compound growth, and it's a power that's available to anyone. You don't need to be wealthy to start, you need to start to become wealthy. But this is another thing the educational system doesn't teach us, so people work their entire lives and retire with nothing, dependent on social security that was never designed to be someone's only income source. Let me ask you something. Do you know how much money you actually need, not need, to maintain your current lifestyle, to retire comfortably, to handle emergencies without panic? Most people have never calculated this. They just have a vague sense that they need more than they have. This vagueness is dangerous because it leads to one of two problems. Either you overestimate how much you need and never feel secure no matter how much you accumulate, or you underestimate and end up in crisis when reality hits. Financial education means knowing your numbers. Not approximately, not kind of, not sort of. Exactly. How much comes in every month? How much goes out? Where does it go? What are you spending on things that matter to you versus things you don't even notice? I've seen people who think they can't afford to save discover they're spending $400 a month on subscriptions they don't use, food they throw away, and impulse purchases they forget about immediately. That's not a character flaw. That's simply a lack of awareness, a lack of tracking, a lack of the basic skills that financial education provides. And once you start tracking, something almost magical happens. You begin making different choices, not out of deprivation, but out of clarity. You start asking yourself, is this worth it? Does this purchase align with what I actually want for my life? Or is this just responding to a trigger, an advertisement, a social pressure? Let's dig into that because it's one of the biggest destroyers of financial security, and nobody talks about it. We live in a world of constant comparison. Social media shows us the highlight reels of everyone else's lives. We see the vacations, the new cars, the restaurant meals, the designer clothes. What we don't see is the credit card debt, the stress, the arguments about money, the sleepless nights. We're competing with illusions, trying to maintain appearances and bankrupting ourselves in the process. This is the hedonic treadmill on steroids. You need to look successful to feel successful, but looking successful is expensive, so you go into debt to maintain the image, which makes you less successful, so you feel worse, so you need to look more successful to compensate. It's a vicious cycle that destroys lives and relationships. Financial education means understanding that wealth is largely invisible. The millionaire next door isn't driving a luxury car and wearing expensive watches. They're living below their means, investing the difference and building actual security instead of the appearance of success. The person with the flashy lifestyle is often the one who's broke, leveraged to the hilt, one layoff away from disaster. But we've been conditioned to admire the display and ignore the substance. Breaking free from this requires not just financial knowledge, but psychological strength, the ability to say no to social pressure and yes to your actual long-term interests. Here's something most people don't realize until it's too late. Your relationship with money is ultimately a relationship with yourself. How you handle money reflects how you handle everything else. If you're impulsive with spending, you're probably impulsive in other areas. If you avoid looking at your bank account, what else are you avoiding? If you feel shame about your financial situation, what other areas of your life are you ashamed of? This is why financial education is so transformative when done properly. It's not just about spreadsheets and budgets. It's about confronting who you are, how you make decisions, what you value, and whether your daily actions align with your stated values. Most people say family is their top priority, but they work 80 hours a week and rarely see their kids. Most people say they want financial security, but they spend everything they make and save nothing. Most people say they want freedom, but they're trapped in jobs they hate because they've built a lifestyle that requires every penny they earn. The disconnect between what we say we want and how we actually live is where the suffering happens. And money, because it's measurable and concrete, shows us this disconnect more clearly than almost anything else. When you start getting your finances in order, you're forced to confront these contradictions. You have to decide what actually matters and make choices accordingly. That's uncomfortable, which is why most people avoid it. But it's also liberating. Let's talk about retirement for a moment, because this is where the lack of financial education creates the most devastating long-term consequences. Most people have a vague idea that they should be saving for retirement, but they don't really understand what that means or how much they need. They might contribute to a 401k if their employer offers matching, but beyond that, they're not really thinking about it. The problem is that retirement is expensive. If you live to 90 and you retire at 65, that's 25 years you need to fund without a paycheck. Social Security might cover basic expenses if it's still there, but if you want to actually enjoy your retirement, travel, have hobbies, help your kids or grandkids, you need substantial savings. Most financial advisors suggest you need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle. To generate that from savings, you typically need to accumulate 8 to 10 times your annual salary. If you make $50,000 a year, that's $400,000 to $500,000 in retirement savings. How many people do you know who are on track to hit that number? The retirement crisis that's coming is going to be brutal. Millions of people who worked hard their entire lives will find themselves unable to retire, or retiring into poverty, dependent on family or government assistance, with none of the dignity or freedom they imagined their golden years would bring. And here's the thing that really gets me. This is preventable. The math isn't complicated. If you start early and invest consistently, you can build substantial wealth over time even on a modest income. The information is freely available. You can learn everything you need to know about personal finance from library books and free online resources. The tools are accessible. You can open an investment account with zero fees and no minimum balance. So why doesn't everyone do this? Why is financial illiteracy so widespread when the solution is so available? Because knowledge isn't the same as action, and action requires overcoming psychological and emotional barriers that are deeply rooted. The shame of admitting you don't know something you feel you should know. The fear of looking stupid by asking questions. The overwhelm of feeling like it's too complicated or too late. The short-term thinking that prioritizes immediate gratification over delayed reward. The belief, conscious or unconscious, that you don't deserve wealth or that money is somehow corrupting. These psychological blocks are more powerful than any lack of information. You can read every personal finance book ever written, but if you believe deep down that you're bad with money, you'll sabotage yourself at every turn. Financial education, real financial education, has to address both the technical knowledge and the psychological barriers. I want to share something that changed my entire perspective on money. It's a concept called financial independence. Not retirement, but independence. The point at which your assets generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses. At that point, work becomes optional. You might still work because you enjoy it or find it meaningful, but you don't have to work to survive. That changes everything. It changes the power dynamic with employers. It changes your ability to take risks or pursue opportunities. It changes your stress levels and your health. It changes what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not. Most people never reach this point because they never think about it as a possibility. They assume they'll work until they're 65 or 70, then stop and hope they have enough to survive. But what if you could reach financial independence at 45, or 50, or even earlier? What would you do with that freedom? What risks would you take? What dreams would you pursue? The path to financial independence isn't mysterious. You need to spend less than you earn, invest the difference in assets that generate returns, and do this consistently until your investment income exceeds your expenses. That's it. The execution requires discipline and knowledge, but the concept is simple. Yet most people never even consider it as a goal because nobody ever told them it was possible. Now I want to address something that might be making you uncomfortable. Maybe as you're hearing all this, you're feeling guilty or ashamed about your current financial situation. Maybe you're thinking about the credit card debt, the lack of savings, the years you've wasted not investing. Maybe you're angry at yourself for not knowing this stuff sooner, for making mistakes, for being where you are instead of where you wish you were. I need you to understand something crucial. Guilt and shame are useless emotions when it comes to money. They paralyze you. They keep you stuck. They prevent you from taking the actions you need to take. Your past financial decisions were made with the knowledge and emotional state you had at the time. You did the best you could with what you knew. Now you know more, or you're about to know more, and you can make different decisions going forward. That's all that matters. Starting today, starting right now, you can begin moving in a different direction. It doesn't matter if you're 25 or 55. It doesn't matter if you have debt or savings. What matters is that you begin taking steps, however small, toward financial literacy and financial health. Every journey starts with a single step, and the biggest obstacle to taking that step is usually the story we tell ourselves about why we can't or why it's too late. Let's talk about what financial education actually looks like in practice, because I think a lot of people imagine it's about becoming an expert in the stock market or learning complex financial strategies. It's not. Financial education starts with the basics, things that sound almost too simple to matter but are actually transformative when you implement them. First, track your spending. Every dollar, every day, for at least 1 month. Not approximately, not in your head, but written down or in an app. This alone will reveal patterns you didn't know existed. Second, create a budget that reflects your actual values. Not a restriction, but a plan for how you want to use your money. Third, build an emergency fund. Start with $1,000, then work toward 3 to 6 months of expenses. This cushion changes everything psychologically. Fourth, eliminate high-interest debt. Credit cards first, other debt second. Fifth, start investing something, anything, even if it's just $25 a month. The habit matters more than the amount at the beginning. These 5 steps, executed consistently, will put you ahead of the majority of people. They're not complicated, but they require commitment and consistency. That's where most people fail, not because the concepts are difficult, but because they don't stick with it long enough to see results. There's another dimension to financial education that's often overlooked: teaching the next generation. If you have kids, the financial habits and attitudes you model will shape their relationship with money more than anything they learn in school. They're watching how you handle money, how you talk about it, whether you stress about it or manage it calmly. They're absorbing whether money is a source of conflict in your relationship or something you handle together as a team. They're learning whether wealth is something to aspire to or something to be suspicious of. Most parents avoid talking to their kids about money because they feel uncomfortable with their own financial situation. But that silence teaches a lesson too. That money is shameful, secret, not to be discussed. A much better approach is to be open about money in age-appropriate ways. Let your kids see you budgeting, investing, making financial decisions. Explain why you choose to save for something instead of buying it on credit. Give them opportunities to manage their own money, even if it's just a small allowance, and let them make mistakes in a low-stakes environment. Teach them about compound interest by showing them how savings grow over time. These lessons, learned young, can set them up for a lifetime of financial health. Or the absence of these lessons can set them up for a lifetime of struggle, repeating the same patterns you wish you'd broken sooner. We're approaching the critical point now, the place where theory meets reality, and you have to decide what you're going to do with what you know. Because information without action is just entertainment. You can consume endless content about financial education, read books, watch videos, nod along with everything, and end up no better off than when you started if you don't actually change your behavior. This is the hard part, the part where most people fall off. Because changing behavior means confronting discomfort. It means saying no to things you want in the short term for the sake of things you want more in the long term. It means having difficult conversations with your partner about money if you're in a relationship. It means possibly changing your social circle if your friends are constantly pressuring you to spend beyond your means. It means sitting down with your finances even when you'd rather avoid them. It means facing reality instead of living in fantasy. Here's what I've learned. The pain of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. The discomfort of setting up a budget, tracking your spending, and investing regularly is temporary and manageable. The pain of reaching retirement age with no savings, of being trapped in a job you hate because you need the money, of watching opportunities pass by because you can't afford to take them. That pain is deep and permanent. I want you to imagine two futures. In the first future, you don't change anything. You continue with your current financial habits. Maybe you make more money over the years, maybe you don't. But your relationship with money stays the same. You still feel that stress when unexpected expenses come up. You still avoid looking at your full financial picture. You still make impulsive decisions you later regret. You still feel that low-level anxiety about money that never quite goes away. 10 years pass, 20, 30, you're older and you've worked hard, but you don't have much to show for it. Retirement approaches, and you realize you're not ready. You're going to have to keep working longer than you wanted, or you're going to have to dramatically reduce your lifestyle. The freedom you imagined never materializes. That's one possible future. Now imagine a different one. You decide today to get serious about financial education. You start with the basics, tracking and budgeting. It's uncomfortable at first, but you stick with it. You eliminate your debt over the next few years. You build an emergency fund. You start investing, even though it's scary at first. Over time, these habits become automatic. You make better financial decisions not because you're depriving yourself, but because you have clarity about what matters. 10 years pass. You have savings. You have investments that are growing. You feel secure in a way you never did before. 20 years pass. You've built real wealth, not because you got lucky or made a huge salary, but because you were consistent and informed. You have options. You can take a risk on a business idea. You can help your kids with college. You can handle a medical emergency without financial ruin. 30 years pass. You reach what would have been retirement age, but work has been optional for years already. Maybe you still work because you love it, or maybe you've moved on to other pursuits. You travel, you volunteer, you spend time with family. You have peace of mind. You sleep well at night. This is also a possible future, available to you right now, if you make the decision to pursue it. The gap between these two futures isn't about luck or talent or privilege. It's about knowledge and action. It's about financial education and the willingness to apply it consistently over time. Everything I've described in the second future is achievable for most people who commit to it. Not everyone. There are real structural inequalities and barriers that make wealth building harder for some than others. But for most people reading this or watching this, the biggest barrier isn't external. It's internal. It's the decision to start and the commitment to continue even when it's hard. So we come to the climax, the moment of decision. You've heard the case for why financial education matters. You understand the consequences of financial illiteracy and the benefits of financial knowledge. You've seen what's possible if you commit to this path. Now the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to close this video and go back to your life unchanged, knowing what you know but not acting on it? Or are you going to make a different choice? I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy. It's not. There will be moments when you want to give up, when the old habits pull at you, when you feel like progress is too slow. But I promise you this, every step you take toward financial literacy and financial health will make the next step easier. The compound effect works not just with money, but with habits and knowledge. The more you learn, the easier it becomes to learn more. The more you save, the easier it becomes to save more. The more you invest, the more confident you become about investing. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know everything before you start. You just need to begin and then keep going. One step at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time. The person you'll become through this process, that's the real wealth. The confidence, the security, the peace of mind, the options, the freedom. That's what financial education ultimately gives you. I started this by telling you that there are decisions being made about your money that you don't know about. Now you know better. Now you have the awareness that changes everything. The question is whether you'll use it. Here's my challenge to you. Take one action today. Just one. It could be downloading a budgeting app. It could be opening an investment account. It could be sitting down and actually calculating your net worth. It could be having that money conversation you've been avoiding. One action today. Then tomorrow, take another one, and the next day another. String enough of these days together and you'll look back a year from now and barely recognize your financial situation. If what I've shared today resonated with you, if you felt that spark of recognition or that flutter of possibility, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, click the like button, not because I need the numbers, but because it's a commitment to yourself. It's a way of saying, I'm taking this seriously, I'm going to keep learning, I'm going to change my financial future. And then drop a comment below. Tell me where you are on your financial journey. Tell me what you're struggling with. Tell me what clicked for you in this video, and if you disagree with anything I've said, tell me that too. I want to hear from you, even if you think I'm completely wrong, because that engagement, that conversation, that's how we all learn and grow together. Your financial future starts right now, with the choice you make in this moment. Choose wisely, choose yourself, choose freedom. I'll see you in the next one.